Fog this morning, ice on the roads, heavy showers across the west, and a potential pattern shift that could bring genuinely cold air from the east by the end of January. That's what we are examining today. Right now, across the United Kingdom, conditions vary considerably from region to region. This morning brought thick fog patches, particularly across northwest England, parts of Wales, and the West Midlands. Visibility dropping below 100 metres in some areas. Not ideal for the morning commute, but compared to some of the warnings we've seen, fog is manageable if you drive carefully and slowly. The Scottish Highlands saw temperatures plummet well below freezing overnight. Where there is snow lying on the ground, temperatures dropped to -5, locally down to -10 in the most exposed rural spots. That is proper cold. Further south, it's been a different story entirely. The rain that moved through yesterday was extensive, 20 to 30 millimetres in places across eastern England and the Midlands. Southern areas saw flood warnings. It's been rather abysmal, to be honest. Cornwall and Devon have been mild and damp, temperatures running near double figures. Compare that to the Highlands at -8 this morning, and you can see the contrast we are dealing with. The Welsh valleys were dry yesterday, but by this morning, heavy rain was moving through. That's how quickly things change. Now, let's address today specifically. The Midlands and Eastern England are seeing a much drier day compared to yesterday. Some brightness may poke through at times. But the west coast of Wales, Devon, Cornwall, and the eastern side of Northern Ireland into southwest Scotland are going to contend with heavy showers. Some pretty substantial downpours moving through at times. Even the odd rumble of thunder, flash of lightning. Temperatures across the Midlands and the south reaching 8 or 9 degrees Celsius. Further north, after that cold start well below freezing, temperatures struggle a bit, but still climb to 5 to 7 degrees. Around the seasonal average. Where the sun does break through, it should feel notably milder than yesterday, even though the actual temperature readings aren't much higher. But I can promise abundant sunshine. We're going to have misty, murky conditions persisting in some areas all day. It's that time of year. January in Britain. Grey skies are part of the package. Through this evening, those heavy showers continue across parts of the west, especially the east of Northern Ireland. More generally across the Midlands and southern England, we could see outbreaks of rain as we go through tonight, pushing northwards. Pushing north because the winds are coming up from the south, bringing mild air with them. Still a chilly night ahead, not as cold as last night. Temperatures in the south holding at 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, but pockets of frost are likely over northern Scotland. And again, where there rests snow on the ground, temperatures will dip a few degrees below freezing. Into the weekend, it's a messy mix, a lot of cloud for many places, a fairly grey weekend, I'm afraid. But for quite a few of us, it should be a dry weekend. Showers will work their way northwards across Scotland. We'll continue to feed showers around the west coast of Wales and into the east of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, perhaps brightening up a touch through the day. Temperatures close to average, 7 to 9 degrees. We might squeak double figures across the southwest. The wind's generally fairly light. Sunday brings similar conditions. Slower moving weather systems, some areas seeing little rain at all, others dealing with persistent drizzle. Now, that is the short-term outlook. What's more interesting is what's developing for the final week of January. And this is where we need to examine the data carefully. According to the latest model runs from the Met Office, ECMWF, and the American GFS, we are looking at a Scandinavian high-pressure system building in. This is NT speculation. Pretty much all models and their ensemble members are showing this pattern. The question is in T whether the high builds. The question is what it delivers. A Scandinavian high in late January can bring bitterly cold easterly winds off the continent. Think back to the beast from the east in February and March 2018. Many of you remember that. Siberian air pushed across the North Sea. Temperatures dropped to -14 Celsius in parts of Scotland. Significant snow across much of the country. Schools closed. Travel disrupted. That was driven by a strong Scandinavian high, allowing easterly winds to tap into Arctic air over Russia and Scandinavia. The current setup has similarities. The high pressure is building to our east. It is slowing down the jet stream, forcing it to dip southwards towards Spain and Portugal. This blocks the usual Atlantic weather systems that bring mild, wet conditions. Instead, we on the cooler side of the jet. Temperatures already average or below average in most areas. Over the next 2 or 3 days, that Scandinavian high starts to strengthen. It doesn't fully detach from the broader European high pressure for another 7 or 8 days. But once it does, it unlocks the potential for easterly winds to push in. And if those easterlies tap into the cold air sitting over Eastern Europe and Western Russia, we could see a significant cold spell. Now, let's be clear about the model signals. The GFS operational run today gets tantalizingly close to pulling in genuinely cold air, but doesn't quite deliver. It shows the beast sitting just across the North Sea by the final days of January, but the cold air stays dispersed across Europe rather than pushing into Britain. A bit of a failure, to be honest. But here's what is significant. The GFS ensemble members have trended even colder today. More cold runs appearing, more very cold runs starting to show up for the final 5 or 6 days of the month. When we say cold, we're talking about specific temperature thresholds. The -5 degrees Celsius isotherm at 850 hectopascals is what meteorologists watch. That's the temperature at roughly 1.5 kilometers altitude. If that pushes over Britain from the east, you are looking at a chilly pattern. Frosts at night, temperatures close to freezing by day, wintry conditions. If we tap into the -10 or -15 isotherm, we looking at very cold conditions indeed. The sort of spell where temperatures struggle to get above freezing even during the day, with overnight lows well below freezing. And if we see the -20 isotherm, that S-beast from the East Territory, truly bitter conditions. The GFS ensembles today show a range of outcomes. Most runs are pulling in the -5 isotherm from around the 22nd or 23rd of January. A number go to -10. 3 or 4 members even reach -15. That S true beast from the east level cold. Now, the majority of runs show a more moderate scenario, a -5 air mass from the east. It would be chilly, it would be wintry. We see snow, particularly across eastern areas. Temperatures close to freezing by day, well below freezing overnight. The ECMWF ensembles, which have just been updated, aren't quite as bullish as the GFS. They not showing the same extreme cold in as many members, but they are showing solidly below average temperatures into the final few days of January, with some very cold runs appearing. The operational ECMWF run this evening shows the Scandinavian high building, but ultimately not delivering the full cold blast. It keeps a southerly tracking jet stream, maintaining something closer to the current pattern. The UK Met Office model, which only runs out to day 10, actually shows a better setup than the GFS for the period it covers. High pressure dominant to the east, a much stronger Scandinavian high building. By day 10, low pressure is diving southwards and bitterly cold air is heading in from the east. It looks like a cleaner setup, with the low digging south and unlocking easterly winds on its eastern flank. If that pattern verifies and continues beyond day 10, it would deliver. The high is dominant towards Scandinavia. The low is pushing south. It should unlock access to the -10, -15, or even -20 degree isotherm. So why the variation between models? Because we're still 8 to 10 days away from the Scandinavian high properly building in and influencing our weather. At this range, the operational runs will vary day to day. That S expected. It S the ensemble trends that matter. And those trends over the past few days have been remarkably consistent. The Scandinavian high builds. The question is the strength and position, which determines whether we just see the periphery of the cold air or whether we tap into the core. Let me put this in perspective. If you just showed me the GFS ensemble chart in isolation, I'd say there is quite a strong chance we head towards a much colder end to January. Whether it's just below average by 3 or 4 degrees, or whether it has an extremely cold spell, remains to be determined. But the colder trends are locked in. The ensemble mean temperatures show a slow drop through next week. We start Monday with highs around 7 or 8 degrees. We end Friday looking at 4 or 5 degrees. Then it could turn even colder as we head into the final week of January. The dew point temperatures in the ensembles have been drifting colder each day. Many runs now show dew points below freezing, indicating very dry, very cold air. 2-meter temperatures have followed suit. Look at the drop-off as we progress through next week. Now, historical context matters here. You've seen this pattern before. Many of you remember the Great Storm of 1987. Gusts exceeding 100 miles per hour. That was a different setup entirely, driven by a rapidly deepening Atlantic low. The Burns Day storm in January 1990 was similar. 107 miles per hour gusts. 47 deaths across the UK. Those were Atlantic-driven systems. But easterlies are different. They often more impactful for cold and snow than northerly flows because easterlies off the North Sea affect a much larger area. Northerlies normally impact Northern Ireland, North Wales, Northwest England and Scotland. Easterlies affect the whole east coast. And given the British Isles is fairly narrow, with the Irish Sea providing moisture to the west, those easterly snow showers spread across much larger areas. If we do see a very cold easterly, it could be widely impactful. The winter of 1962 to 63 was driven by persistent easterlies. The Big Freeze, Coldest winter since 1740. Snow lay from Boxing Day through to March. The beast from the east in 2018 brought similar conditions, though shorter lived. If the current pattern delivers, it won't necessarily match those historic events, but it has the potential to be significant, particularly for areas that didn't see much snow in early January. So what should you do? First, don't panic. This is a potential pattern shift, not a certainty. We should have more confidence over the coming days. As the Scandinavian high starts to build over the next 2 or 3 days, the models will converge on a clearer outcome. By this weekend, we'll have a better idea. It might even be the middle of next week before we know for certain, at which point we be 4 or 5 days from any very cold air threatening. Second, if you're in southern or eastern England and you don't regularly see snow, now is the time to think about preparation. Not because it is guaranteed, but because if it does arrive, it could catch people off guard. Most people in the southeast don't keep snow shovels to hand. That's fair enough. You might not need them most years, but if this pattern delivers, you will want one. Check your heating system is working properly. Make sure you've got adequate supplies. If you have elderly neighbours, check on them. These easterly spells can be dangerous for vulnerable people. Third, if you can be flexible with travel plans for the final week of January, do so. If the models continue showing this cold trend and we gain confidence, travel could become difficult, particularly across eastern areas where snow showers off the North Sea would be most persistent. Roads in the south and east want to be gritted as thoroughly as they would be in Scotland or northern England, where they more accustomed to regular winter conditions. For Scotland and northern England, you're already dealing with frost and ice regularly this winter. This wouldn't be unprecedented. But if we tap into the very cold air mass, the -10 or -15 isotherm, it would be notably colder than you've experienced so far this season. Proper cold, the sort where you don't want to be outside for long. Now, a word about uncertainty. I've seen some forecasts over the past few days that have been rather excitable about this potential cold spell, talking about guaranteed blizzards and the most extreme cold in decades. That is not helpful. Yes, the models are showing a significant signal. Yes, the ensemble trends have been impressive, but we are still 10 days out from the period of interest. The operational runs are going to vary. Some will show extreme scenarios, others will back off. That is the nature of forecasting at this range. What we can say with reasonable confidence is this: a Scandinavian high-pressure system looks likely for the final week of January. That high will bring colder air from the east, whether it's just a below-average, chilly pattern with some frosts and perhaps a bit of wintry weather, or whether it's a more significant cold spell with persistent snow and very low temperatures. We'll know more in the coming days. The setup is on a knife edge. There is a big block of cold air sitting over Eastern Europe and Western Russia. I'd be very surprised if we didn't tap into some of it, whether we just see the periphery, the -5 isotherm, or whether we pull in the -10 or -15. That is still to be determined. It could be a colder, frosty pattern with a slight easterly breeze, or it could be a true beastly easterly. We want to know until the high-pressure system starts to build and we see how the models handle its interaction with the jet stream and any low-pressure systems trying to move in from the Atlantic. I suspect we won to have a definitive answer for another few days. Maybe this weekend we'll see more consistency. The models could continue trending colder, in which case confidence grows, or they could back off, showing the high pressure isn't strong enough to unlock the very cold air. We'll be monitoring this closely. One thing worth noting, the GFS has sometimes been a bit too bullish with cold patterns in the past. It tends to latch onto extreme scenarios that Don-T always verify. The ECMWF is generally more conservative, and it is not showing the same extreme cold in as many ensemble members, but it is showing below average temperatures. So even the more conservative model is indicating a change from the current mild, unsettled pattern. For those in East Anglia, I know many of you have been waiting for snow. You've gone several winters without decent covering in some areas. This pattern has potential. But I'm not going to promise anything until we see how these systems develop. Easterlies can be fickle. The snow bands are often narrow. You can have heavy snow 10 miles inland and nothing on the coast, or vice versa, depending on wind direction and moisture availability. For those in the Midlands, you've had a particularly quiet winter so far. Temperatures hovering around 6 or 7 degrees, grey skies, not much of note. Rather dull for those who enjoy proper winter weather. That extended mild spell looks set to end next week when the pattern changes. How dramatic that change is, we'll see. For Wales, you've been dealing with a lot of rain this week. Near record rainfall in places. That changes starting this weekend and into next week as the high pressure builds. Drier conditions initially, then potentially colder air from the east. The contrast we've seen this week with the Highlands at -8 and Cornwall near 10 degrees, that sort of spread compresses as the Arctic air pushes south. The whole country would be under the influence of the same air mass. rather than the current setup where southern areas are mild and northern areas cold. Now, beyond the cold potential, there are other impacts to consider. With an easterly pattern, we see a shift in where the wettest conditions occur. Currently, western areas are bearing the brunt of the showers and rain because westerlies and southwesterlies dominate. With easterlies, it's the east coast that sees the most active weather. Snow showers off the North Sea. Those can be persistent and accumulate significantly, particularly over higher ground. The Pennines would likely see substantial snow with a strong easterly, the North York Moors, the Lincolnshire Wolds, parts of East Anglia. Even areas that Don T usually see much snow could be affected if the setup is right. Meanwhile, western areas could be relatively dry, sheltered from the easterly flow by the Pennines and Welsh mountains. Temperature-wise, with a true easterly, you notice the difference immediately. The wind chill would be significant. A -5 air temperature with a 20-mile-per-hour easterly wind would feel considerably colder. Factor in gusts of 30 or 40 miles per hour, which is possible with this sort of pattern, and it would feel bitterly cold indeed. Not dangerous for most people if you are dressed appropriately, but uncomfortable and something to be aware of, particularly for those not accustomed to it. For the next few days, then, it's about monitoring the models. If you're interested in following along, watch for the ensemble trends, not just the operational runs. One operational run showing extreme cold doesn't mean much. 20 or 30 ensemble members consistently showing below average temperatures, that's a signal worth paying attention to. The key markers to watch are the strength and position of the Scandinavian high, the track of any Atlantic low-pressure systems, and the temperature of the air mass over Eastern Europe. If the high is strong and positioned over Scandinavia or Western Russia, and if Atlantic lows track well to the south, that unlocks easterlies. If there is very cold air sitting over the continent, those easterlies bring it to us. By this weekend, the Scandinavian high should be established enough that the models handle it more consistently. By the middle of next week, we should know with reasonable confidence whether we are looking at a moderate chill or something more significant. And by then, we'd only be 4 or 5 days from the period of interest, which is a much more reliable forecast range. For now, the message is this: be aware, keep an eye on the forecasts. Don't make assumptions either way. It's not guaranteed to be mild, and it's not guaranteed to be bitterly cold. The pattern is shifting. We just don't know yet how far it shifts. In the immediate term, fog and ice this morning, heavy showers in the west, a chilly night ahead with frost in places, and an unsettled weekend with a messy mix of cloud, showers, and perhaps some brightness. Not particularly exciting weather, but potentially the calm before something more interesting develops. The final week of January could be notably different from what we have experienced so far this winter. Whether that's just a bit colder and frostier, or whether it is a significant cold spell with snow and ice, time will tell. The data suggests something coming. Exactly what, we'll know soon enough. Stay safe, drive carefully in the fog, grit your paths if frost is forecast, and keep checking the updates over the coming days.